Hello all, a nice Tale here, bringing you not a review. It is an overview today, and just an overview of this Bestech Excentric, which, I mean, you can kind of tell why it's called that. Well, I want to start this one off by saying that this is not a review because this is not my knife. I did not carry this knife. I did not use this knife. I'm not keeping this knife, obviously. I want to give a quick and massive shout out to White Mountain Knives, who sent this thing in for me to check out, and I'm going to send it back to them. And apparently that's awesome, and that I greatly appreciate. It's a chance to check out something that I didn't necessarily think I was going to buy or even wanted for myself. I was honestly on the fence about this thing when I first saw it. Well, I have to say, after handling it, I like it a lot more than I thought. But before we get into my thoughts on it, let's just do a quick specs, because I can do that. The blade is a hair over 3 3/4 to the front of the handle, which is, it's much larger than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be like a smaller knife, or like just a regular full-size knife. It's large. It's a good-sized knife. I mean, yeah, it just barely hits my mark of maybe being large. 5 1/4 overall, and 9 1/8. So yeah, 9 inches. It's a sizable knife. I could have the debate of it not being maybe a large knife if you want, but I'm just gonna compare it to my full-size comparison, the Civivi Conspirator, and if I have a string of magnets attached to it, but if they would get off for a second, I have the small comparison, which is the Civivi Elementum, and as you can see, this thing is considerably larger than both of them. There's no bones about it. This does actually feel kind of like a large knife. Close comparison, it does close up pretty well, but it is still definitely tall. It's got a bit of an arc to it, and then the blade sticks out, so yeah, it's still taller than these other knives. Definitely. Not by maybe quite as much as you might think. And thickness, it's reasonably thick. It is contoured-ish. It's contoured, but it's got so much milling and, like, this outer layer right here is contour, but there's so much milling and other stuff going on that it's a little hard to tell, but it is also pretty thick. Get that out of the way. Let's take a quick look at how thick it is. Negative. That's new. I'm just kidding. It's done that before. It's just I don't see it very often. 552 thousandths. So yeah, it's over half an inch. It's reasonably on the thick side, but it feels good in the hand. It doesn't feel bad. Now I have to figure out where I can get a proper thickness on it, because this is all swedge back here. I guess right up here at its thickest point, maybe? I don't know. This one's going to be as you can see, it's like all swedge. I guess this would probably be the thickest point on the knife right here. 155 thousandths? 58? Something like that? Let's see, down here, if I can... 157, okay. So you do have kind of like this line right here that gives you the get it on camera. Now behind the edge should be interesting. Behind the edge on this knife is 15 thousandths. Yeah, I'm comfortable calling it 15 thousandths. Behind the edge up here on the front primary bevel, and that's a dog in the background. No, you're not that thick, come on. 20 thousandths. What you have to understand is this is the primary long cutting bevel on this one, which is odd. Is thicker because it's flat ground. This is hollow ground back here. So It just doesn't want to cooperate for getting its measurements, honestly. And that's mostly the design. Weight. 5.75 ounces. Yeah, it's on the heavier... no. 5-ounce knife is not by any means heavy, and especially one for something this size. In full titanium, it's got milling. But that's by no means a heavy knife. It's just the ratios are not even. Hardware check. T8. 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 I was as gentle as that as possible. Not a single mark has been left on this knife, and I'm going to keep it that way. T8 all around. I like seeing that. I like seeing that very much. And I think that brings us to the end of our general specifications. The designers of this knife, if you can see in here, are TNT and, if you can't tell, this is combo. But he does a lot of the Bestech designs. This is the Bestech Excentric. That's definitely combo. Or I should say, this is definitely combo. I like a lot of his designs. They're interesting. I don't think I actually have any of his designs. I'll have to rectify that at some point. But, so, this knife is in a dark stonewash, or kind of a regular matte stonewash, which I'm not usually too fond of these non-reflective stonewashes. I like when the knife actually has, a still looks like this reflecting steel and not just this matte stuff. But honestly, with this knife, with the whole presentation, it just kind of looks clean and works. We have this green anodization, which is really actually quite attractive. There's not as much of a yellow tint, especially up here in the pivot, as I thought that you can sometimes get in with the green. Like if you get a little bit of pearlescence going from an angle, you can see just a hint of that sort of slight limey green showing through. But for the most part, this is really pretty attractive. And sort of a light blue-green, maybe. It's very green. We have a ton of milling on this thing. Does it need it? If you're talking basic functional of the knife, no, but that's kind of Combo's things. He likes distinct knives that are above just being standard, I guess. And Husky, dog boy, this hits it. Backspacer, pocket clip. Good retention on the pocket clip. It's a tiny bit stiff, but I think it would work pretty well. I haven't even put this in the pocket, so I can't tell you, but it does feel like it's pretty good. It's in M390. It is a liner lock, or not liner lock, it's a frame lock. It just has this acting as an over travel stop up in here. It is on bearings, if you couldn't guess that. It is flipper only. We have this crazy 3-prong grind. I guess there's a swedge up there, so 4-prong grind. With this, and the division between the two grinds is this weird, can you kind of see it in there? It's an S, or something like similar to it. It's pretty consistent, too, if we're being as complex as it is. There's a lot of stuff going on with this blade. I can't speak to how useful this blade shape is, because you kind of... you can definitely cut with the tip. It's a little higher than if it was just, a normal Wharncliffe. But you can get to it no problem. You have a lot of primary bevel. I guess you'd probably be doing most of your cutting with that, like this, in this kind of grip. This is thin and small, but I'm sure it could be used for something, a push grip or something like that. I don't know. The overall hand feel of this knife is actually surprisingly comfortable. I thought that clip was going to be a problem, but it kind of just takes the place of feeling like the handle. You feel it a little bit. It's there. You know that it's standing up higher than the rest of the stuff, but barely. And it's not uncomfortable at all, at least not in my hand, so... I guess it's because it's takes up most of the handle. It just sort of replaces its position. So it works. It's a little bit weird in your push grip, but then again, this is a weird knife. You kind of want to go up here for the push grip. That's where I find it's more comfortable. Get in front of the bend. You also have this gigantic sharpening choke where the plunge grind comes... The plunge grind on this is kind of difficult, but it looks like it comes to about here. The gray makes it a little bit difficult to see. It's quite a bit of life, though, either way. And you can use this as a finger choil, even though it kind of looks dangerous because it looks like it's sloping you right into that. This flipper sort of acts like a stop to keep you from going up any further, so I feel reasonably comfortable here that I'm not going to slip up on this blade, and I'm certainly not too close to that. And it's surprisingly comfortable in this grip. Yeah. But, yeah, I could see myself using this knife up like this. Because when your fingers start spreading apart too wide, it starts getting uncomfortable. So you naturally kind of sort of keep... At least I do. I don't know about everybody else. But you sort of keep them together a bit. Which keeps you away from the edge. Seems reasonable. And seems surprisingly functional. Again, the entire blade's functionality is, I don't know, maybe questionable. You can use the secondary edge as your draw cuts or the primary. It's a blade shape, and that it is. And as I said, on this is on bearings, and yes, as you can see, this is possibly some of the best action I've ever felt from Bestech. I mean, this is out of the box. What the heck? They can do this? It's centered. There's no play. I did check for that. But that's what it's been doing the entire time. That's pretty darn impressive. The only two nitpicks I have are, and these are just, again, personal things. Well, this one's not a personal thing. I wish that the lock bar was, not that it had to be on the inside, because they put the designer's logos in there, that's fine. I just wish they knocked these edges down a little bit more. As I'm moving around and switching grips and stuff like that, occasionally I can feel these, and they're a little bit harder than they should be. And they kind of are a little bit sharper than the rest of the knife, honestly. Anywhere on the knife, even the tip of the clip. This is kind of the hardest angle on this thing. The other thing I thought, I guess this isn't really a nitpick, the other thing I thought was going to be a problem was this flipper tab. Well, I thought it was going to work really well, and when I first got it, I thought it was a problem. It's not so much. It's just different. It's very low profile, and it's got big kind of wide jimping in there, which is kind of its downfall a little bit, because when you want to go for your basic, like, say, half, I don't know about everybody else, but for my basic switch, it's that. It's not a full push button, it's not a full light switch, it's sort of somewhere in between. That's what I go to, basically. Normal. It works on this knife, or it doesn't. This thing is very susceptible to lock bar pressure. You can lock yourself out of this knife pretty easily. And then the big kind of wider jimping sort of starts hurting your finger as you're yanking on it, because it's also got a pretty strong detent. Like, this is a pretty solid detent. If you like strong detents, yeah, this is really solid. So at first I thought it was going to be a problem because it kind of locks itself out. But what I realized was it just sort of demands an unorthodox or slightly different than usual. Basically, you can go way up here, and you're kind of off the off the lock bar there when you go up there. At least I am. And you can just push button it. It works pretty well. It's not uncomfortable, and there's a dog making a lot of noise going, yes, I hear you. But you go way up here, push button the thing. It's still a little bit rough if you hit the lock bar, but for the most part, it works. He's walking away, still making noise. The other option is to sort of drag your finger along here, but only catch on the top, like the last bit of jimping here. Even though that does not look like it's where you want to get this knife, and it doesn't feel like you have a very good grip on this thing, if you pull back a little bit and you're off the lock bar, for some reason, it pops open. With very little effort. It's kind of weird. I don't quite get it. Maybe it's a leverage thing. I didn't think that it was tall enough to really give you that, but yeah, you go way up here and you sort of light switch it. As long as you're off the lock bar, it flies out like nobody's business. I don't understand it. But it works. So, yeah. The flipper tab is not actually a problem. I mean, I don't like seeing knives lock themselves out, but as long as you get used to this thing, it probably won't be an issue. So, I like this knife quite a bit. I think it's executed really well, like, surprisingly. I mean, Bestech does a good job, but this is quite well executed overall. Again, I can't speak to the function or the edge holding or anything about the knife, but the quality and condition it came to me in is top-notch. And it's a very unique design that I'm very happy I got to check out. So I'm going to be sending this thing back. See, it can still get you a little bit. You just sort of gotta almost go lighter than you really think you need to. But that's it for me. This was a look at the Bestech Excentric, and it's definitely eccentric. It's a unique knife. I like it. I didn't even think I'd like the color pattern. I do. Who knew? That's all. Thanks for watching.